live, so I think we'll ask for the music so that we get started. Okay, we are waiting for our music to come on as people are joining. Well, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to our meeting this afternoon. This is the ZiMMA meeting, Zimbabwe Ministers Association, and this is our series on current affairs where we are looking at what's happening around us. And this afternoon, we are going to be talking about COVID-19 and, its impact. And so a very warm welcome to everybody that's joining us. If you're a minister from Zimbabwe, we want to welcome you. If you are joining us and you're a minister from another nation, you're still very welcome. It's a joy to have you, and we trust that this afternoon is going to be relevant and interesting as we talk about COVID-19. My name, as your moderator, is Ngwiza Mkandla. I'm the presiding bishop of Faith Ministries International. I've been a pastor for a little over 40 years, so I've been around a bit and seen one or two things. It's my pleasure this afternoon to welcome you on behalf of the ZiMMA Steering Committee, who you will get to meet in a little while, and perhaps even more formally in the month of November, when we officially launch ZiMMA. But for this afternoon, a number of the ZiMMA Steering Committee members are on the panel that's going to be, taking the discussions this afternoon. Our topic today is on COVID-19. Well, who isn't talking about COVID-19? Everybody is, and we all know, this is a subject that has, occupied the whole world. And we want to discuss a number of issues, related to COVID-19. Specifically, we're going to talk about the pandemic itself. We're going to talk about the fear factor that it has raised. We're going to talk about the lockdown and its impact. We're going to talk about the economic factors. And we'll perhaps, somewhere along the line towards the end, look at whatever opportunities there may be that we may be seeing out of, COVID-19. Well, with us in the virtual studio this afternoon is a very interesting panel that has been specifically invited, to present, and I'm going to introduce them to you in a moment. Just getting their bios so that I can introduce them properly. We have with us this afternoon. Just give me a moment. I'm just getting to my page here to introduce the panel to you. We have with us Pastor Anthony Tembo, who is the major driver behind ZiMMA. He is the chairman of ZiMMA, and you will be, officially hearing about his resume somewhere down the road. It's a little late coming into the studio, but we will be introducing him formally shortly. That's Pastor Tembo there. And then also in the studio, with us, we have Pastor Hartness Samushonga, who is the secretary of the ZiMMA, steering committee. Those of you who've been getting any communication from us, will have noticed that it's coming from Pastor Hartness Samushonga. He's a well-respected ministry leader, consultant, and management and leadership, specialist. He's the founder and senior leader of Millennium Harvest Church in Northeast England, in the Hull area, and is involved in a number of Christian ministry and leadership activities and programs in the UK and abroad. Hartness is also the founder of Bevo Support International, an organization that is involved in raising, training, developing, and mentoring ministry leaders and consulting for church and ministry organizations and theological schools on bivocational ministry, training, development, and research in the UK and abroad. His business interests include health and social care and leadership and management consultancy and coaching. Hartness is an accomplished scholar and has published various scientific articles in international academic journals on subjects that include theology, leadership and management, and professional burnout. Hartness is an alumni of the Harvard University Kennedy School of Government and is a member of a number of professional and academic bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Pastor Hartness Samushonga. And then Pastor Hartness Samushonga is married to Pastor Fungai Samushonga, who is on the panel as well. Pastor Fungai Samushonga is a co-pastor at Millennium Harvest Church in Hull, a ministry, of course, she co-founded with her husband, Hartness. She also is a founder of Overflow Global Ministry, a ministry whose ethos is to encourage, equip, and impart God's peace, perspective, and purpose in today's woman. Her heart is to see women worldwide step into the God-given destinies with wholeness, godly confidence, boldness, and purpose. Fungi has extensive Christian ministry and leadership experience and is a dynamic speaker and Bible teacher. Fungai runs a number of programs and initiatives that have and continue to transform various groups of people practically and spiritually in the UK and abroad. Fungai has diverse experience working in the NHS and has business interests in health and social care and business and management consultancy. She's also, author and is engaged and regularly contributes to current affairs discussions. Amongst many other things, Fungai is a mom and a loving wife, an excellent cook, and enjoys spending time with family. I wish we could enjoy some of her cooking, but that's not to be for today. She, together with Hartness, make their home in Beverley, East Yorkshire, and are blessed with beautiful 2 children, Enoch and Alicia. Just to let you know that Enoch is behind the controls, helping us with the technical side. So welcome to the Samushonga family.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Great, great. Yeah. Also with us is David Midzi, Pastor David Midzi. Pastor David Midzi is the senior pastor at Living Faith International Ministries in Corby, Northamptonshire. He's a husband and a father. David is a mechanical engineer by profession and an apostle by calling. He holds a Master of Theology degree and is passionate about pragmatic Christian leadership and personal growth. He's dedicated to inspiring men and women to become entrepreneurs so that they can become economically free to fund the kingdom. All right, that's Pastor Midzi. Along with us this afternoon is Dr. Chireka. I'll just work on his resume here. Allow me to introduce to you Dr. Chireka. Dr. Chireka is a medical doctor. He's an international health consultant and a primary care physician with over 20 years experience. He's a founding fellow of the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management and a member of the Royal College of General Practitioners. He is the health ambassador for ZiMMA Thrive and is the founding chairperson of Zimbabwe Diaspora Health Alliance, abbreviated ZDHA. He is currently championing the plight of BAME staff in the UK by facilitating a weekly platform for them to share their experience and support one another. He is the 2015 Zimbabwe Achievers Awards UK Community Champion. In 2016, Brighton won the Blogger of the Year Award of the Zimbabwe Music and Arts Award. You sing as well. Well, I didn't know you were involved in music. ZiMMA in UK for his articles in raising health awareness. In 2018, Brighton received a BAFTA People's Choice Award for his outstanding contribution in the society. In 2019, he received the Icon recognition from C-Hub Magazine Creativity and Arts Award in recognition of his selfless contributions and voluntary services to the BAME community. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Chireka. And then along with us this afternoon, we have a young man. Allow me to get to his resume here. Benjamin. I will get to his resume in a moment. Benjamin is, all right, here we go. Forgive me as I get there. I'm trying to find where I stored this information. We are almost there. Thank you for your patience with me. I do apologize, Benjamin. I can't seem to find your details. I've got them, and I'm just, it's taking me a little time to get to them. Benjamin is, just hold on a sec. All right, Benjamin is a law graduate. He is an MSc Strategy and International Business student, founder of a youth CIC organization called Emerge Now that equips young people in leadership, mental health, career, and personal development. He's a youth leader and Citizens UK, a civic society organization, and involved in community organizing. He is the digital lead youth worker for Active Horizons, a London-based youth charity. He is the youth secretary at AFM in Walsall. He's a preacher and a teacher of the word. He's a gospel artist and worship leader. That's Ben. So welcome, everybody. I will introduce formally Pastor Anthony once we locate his resume. But a very warm welcome to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our panel who are going to take us through our discussions this afternoon as we talk about COVID. Well, with that brief introduction of each of our panelists, I'm going to ask us to move right away into our discussions. For those of you who are in the room here, please ensure that you are muted so that we don't have any unwelcome disturbances as we discuss. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. I want to just start off by saying that before we got onto COVID-19, we were handling the issue of Brexit. And we were also, as a nation, facing the challenge of, knife crime. I want to just very briefly set that as a background to our discussions very quickly. If we can have, a few comments from, some of you on this. Brother Midzi, can I ask you to comment? Dr. Brighton, maybe I'll ask you to comment as well. And then Benjamin, in that order. Brother Midzi, Brother Dr. Chireka, and then Benjamin, just comment briefly on Brexit and on knife crime from your perspective, as we're just setting a background for, the challenge of COVID-19.
Those two subjects that we have introduced have been challenging, particularly to our migrant community, the first generation migrants that are here in the UK. Brexit brought some challenges, and people didn't know what's going to happen to us after Brexit. Are we going to be secure in the UK now that the government is free to put some new laws? What is it that they're going to introduce? So it actually imposed and caused some anxiety within our community as migrants. So that's one major factor. You are looking at the jobs, you are looking at immigration status. Are we going to be told to pack and go back to where you came from? So that's been a major challenge that Brexit was bringing onto us as a migrant community. And obviously the knife crime, nobody feels safe. You're always looking over your shoulder, and when you meet people, you don't know what's going to happen. That's how the society has turned out to be. So those are major challenges that Brexit and the knife crime was giving to the community.
Great. Any comment from you, Dr. Chireka? You're good to go, sir. You've muted yourself there again.
So the famous word these days is you are muted. That is the famous phrase we are now used to. You are muted. You'll be talking to yourself. So yes, we have been having challenges with Brexit and our children getting involved in gun crime. So that was causing a lot of anxiety and chronic stress in ourselves. And then come COVID, which has now caused another anxiety. So the challenge that we have been having is that we may neglect to address the issues that we were facing due to the Brexit. and also the challenges that our children are having. So I'm happy that we have now, we're talking about this issue so that when we talk about COVID, we mustn't think that COVID is happening in isolation. COVID is happening whilst Brexit is happening. COVID is happening whilst our children are involved in gun crime. So we cannot separate these things and see them or deal with them in piecemeal. We have to have a holistic approach of how we can deal with all these challenges that we are having.
All right, thank you, sir. Benjamin, any comments?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so I won't comment much on the knife crime because I'll touch on it later when I'm specifying on young people. But I think definitely prior to Brexit, we were already facing a recession that was coming, because recessions have cycles, and we were already coming into our next wave of a recession, right? And that was precipitated further by Brexit, which meant there was uncertainty around employment and the economy in general. And that recession combined with Brexit together, the lockdown further multiplied the anxiety levels, because all those three factors combined, it meant economic uncertainty, and it meant there's no certainty for young people in terms of job applications, in terms of job security. So there was already anxiety coming from both of those. So I think economics-wise, there was a lot of anxiety built, and I think people didn't have enough time to deal with Brexit because COVID came and pretty much interrupted Brexit halfway through. I remember I hosted a one-day conference with Aston University around Brexit, how we can navigate life after Brexit, and everything that we discussed in that conversation became irrelevant 2 weeks later when lockdown happened. So I think even on a personal level, to make it more personal, I was a bit uncertain as someone who was graduating soon, saying, okay, what's going to happen to me as a young person, because I'm not sure if I'm going to get the job I had intended to get, simply because of the uncertainty built around the economy. So yeah, it's just those three main factors. Recession is the biggest thing. And I think there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago, if not about a month ago, that the UK has officially entered into its worst recession ever. But people didn't have enough time to take it in because COVID and lockdown is still over our heads, and not even forgetting the Black Lives Matter movement and protests that happened. So there was a lot of political unrest, social unrest, economic unrest, financial unrest, uncertainty all at once. So that's been our experience.
Great. It's very clear that we are facing major challenges, Brexit and knife crime being those that preceded COVID-19, and now, as you mentioned, Benjamin, also the Black Lives Matter movement and all that has taken place as a result of that. While I'm with you there, Benjamin, can you tell us a little bit, where are young people hanging out these days? What are their social patterns? What about gangs, drug cartels, and all these things that were running before? What's your take on that? Do you think that's still happening, or did COVID-19 push all that out of the way?
So God help me to answer this in a few minutes because it's such a broad question. But definitely in terms of hanging out, I think we have all been forced to move to social media in terms of our social physical meeting places. And for example, I know outside of the community, even just in terms of education, has forced us to move online. So I think there's been more online engagement with young people during lockdown. But obviously with that comes both the benefits and the burden of social media, such as cyberbullying, that's obviously increased. Another thing that the lockdown has affected young people in terms of drugs and crime, moving in that direction. There's definitely been a reduction in most crimes by virtue of people staying indoors. And there's also been an increased level of police activity because they've had to be out more to ensure that people are indeed staying at home. So there's been a general reduction in crime, but one of the significant, it's been recorded that there's been a 32% reduction in crime. But one of the crimes that's actually increased proportionately is the drug culture. Drugs, I think they've increased by about 30% as well. No, by 22% during the lockdown. And I think it's because the nature of drug crime and drug cartels is that it's quite mobile and it's not really restricted to gatherings. People are able to still post just like you post a letter. But also just to finally emphasize that it's not a complete reflection only in terms of the activities or the attitudes of young people. These statistics are more based on police activities. So the more police are more intentional about pursuing crime, then the more stats will rise. So I think that's been the impact in terms of crime related. And the last part of your question, social patterns. So I think social patterns have just moved to more online related stuff. And one of the comments that's I was reading an article a couple of weeks ago that the chairman of the police said that they anticipate more gang activity and crimes post-lockdown because being online based, young people have turned to taunting each other and starting wars online. So they might follow that through post-lockdown. That's pretty much it.
Wow, that's quite revealing. All right, let's turn now to the pandemic itself. And Dr. Chireka, I'm going to focus on you initially as far as this is concerned. Let's start our conversation on that. The first point that I want to start from is the fact that there's been quite a few conspiracy theories about, the pandemic. Was it something that the Chinese manufactured and exported around the world? Was it caused by 5G towers, being mounted all over the place? We've all seen all kinds of, comments and, videos on that. Dr. Chireka, from a scientific medical, perspective, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so basically, when the pandemic started, we had a lot of misinformation, which was causing harm, and we lost people due to that. If you remember, there was one point that they were saying COVID does not affect Black people, and then we got complacent, and we lost a lot of people in America and in the United Kingdom. And then we start hearing that it was G5 towers causing that. But what people were gullible and they were not even being critical about what was being said. A simple thing that this virus causes high temperature, causes you to cough, causes you to have breathing problems, and is spread from one person to another person through coughing, sneezing, or through contaminated surfaces. So where does the G radiation comes into effect? When we talk about radiation only can affect cells and then in the long run maybe cause cancer. If people were linking G towers to cancer, then that would make a bit of sense. But what we know is that even with that, the risk is very low. So when it comes to infectious disease, linking it to radiation, it shows that people are not even understanding the basic science. But people ran with it, and most of our people were actually emotional about it. But now, all of a sudden, that G5 thing is gone. People are now talking about, well, COVID does not affect people. It's not affecting Africa as such. What people are forgetting is that this virus does mutate. You may have less strain. And also what people are forgetting that this virus, when it affects young people, it does not cause severe symptoms. It does not make them go into to be admitted in hospitals. So we are finding that Africa, we have got a young population, and these are the people that are being affected. And most of our young people are in urban centers. Most of our elderly people are in rural areas where they are also shielded and protected. So people just need to know that this is what is happening, basically. So COVID is caused by a virus. There's always a debate, was it in the lab or was it from animals and what have you? That debate can continue, but we follow what World Health Organization is telling us, that it was from Wuhan, most likely from birds, most likely in that wet market in Wuhan. So that's what we follow. To me, the origin and all that, that's not important. What is most important is what can we do about it? What can we do to prevent? What can we do to make the impact of this COVID less negative?
All right, Doctor, while we are with you there, give us a summary of, just your experiences as far as the impact of the virus on the delivery systems of the country, the NHS, and the resultant impact on the, BME community. We've seen that, many BME communities have been more affected than other communities. Tell us why this is so, and just give us a general status of where things are as far as the pandemic is concerned.
Yeah. At the beginning, there was a lot of challenges into the NHS and a lot of challenges in the BEM community. The simple reason was that there was lack of personal protective equipment. And wherever it was being given on racial grounds, or it was being given on whether you were permanent staff or you were not permanent staff. And sadly, most of our BEM community people, they because they are BEM, they also get segregated, and also they work with agent staff, they are not permanent staff. So they were now negatively affected in that aspect. Another thing was that the NHS was overwhelmed in the beginning, and they were not testing people. So a lot of people were not being tested in the beginning, and the system was crumbling. But as we went along, we created a space. The BEM community, I want to commend ourselves for rising up to the challenge. We formed the platforms, we formed networks where we worked together and supported one another. We encouraged one another to speak up. We encouraged each other to go for risk assessment, and we forced employers to look after BEM people, and also the government to provide personal protective equipment. And I'm happy to say things have changed. The equipment is now there, but the struggle is still continuing, of racism is still continuing. And what we just need to be aware is that COVID is real, it's still with us. We mustn't be complacent, but the effect or the impact is now getting a little bit better, but we are now getting what I would say a second wave or a silent pandemic, which we will go into detail as we talk on this platform.
Well, while we're on that, Doctor, in the last couple of days, I picked up, information that, there's been a spike in our infection levels, and that, government may be thinking of tightening things again. What's the status on that?
Yeah, basically what has happened is that with the opening of schools and also with the complacence among everyone, because this pandemic has continued for a long time, 6 months, 7 months, people start to be complacent. They've been lowering our guard, and what has happened is that we have started seeing, with open schools as well, we started seeing numbers going up. And I'm glad that they are taking it seriously and they are taking action. I think that is the right way at the moment to take action, but I don't think it's going to be as terrible as it was around March or April. I think now we are much wiser, we are much prepared, and my message to everyone is that COVID is real. Even now, let us stop these gatherings. If we're going to gather, let us make sure we are wearing our face masks, we are washing our hands, and we are also maintaining social distancing of at least 2 meters away from each other.
Thank you, Doctor. That's great. We'll come back to you later just to get some more. Can I just find out from the panelists, has any one of you lost a relative or a friend or somebody through COVID? Could I just check Pastor Samshonga and Mrs. Samshonga? Have you lost anybody in your fellowship?
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I think that was my fault. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, possibly like everybody else in this country, in any country, we have lost people that we actually know. Not so much of close relations, But I mean, even then, it hits you right home there when you know somebody in reality who actually is affected, and particularly if they've lost their life, because the impact, it goes beyond the individual or the individual family, because there'll be some will be parents with children. So we have experience as a family, people that we actually know, and we can actually relate with the experience where somebody you know have actually died because of COVID-19.
Okay, okay. Pastor David?
I have lost a friend, a sister in the Lord, that we used to worship with because of COVID-19. And one man of God that was very dear to us, yeah, we lost him through that. And I'm in touch with my friends because I go for international ministry. And there are many of our ministry friends in South Africa in particular, bishops, apostles that have sadly lost their lives through that. So it's real. It's very close to home.
Right, right. Yeah, I asked this question because, you know, when Dr. Chireka says, you know, this thing is real, it is real. Just this last week in my own family, you know, I've lost a number of people. I can talk about 2 in the last couple of weeks, you know, who we've lost to COVID. Mrs. Samshonga, anybody that you know that's, you know, died?
Yes, we thank God for the gift of life and safety. We have also, not in the immediate family, but within the ministry circles, somebody that we used to fellowship with, who was also a health worker, that so we lost her to COVID, and also other ministers that we knew. And so it has been a very devastating time emotionally, because when you know this has happened, even if it's not happened to your relation, but it's work colleagues, it's people that you knew, it's people that you shared life with. So the impact has been heavy, and it's been like ongoing this week, the next day, the day after. So it has been an emotionally traumatic season, but we thank God for the faith that we hold on to God. But yes, definitely, we have seen the devastating part of COVID-19.
Yeah, Pastor Anthony, what's been your experience?
Well, in the past few months, I think it was more to do with the health workers that have been in the hospital, working around the COVID patients themselves, maybe as a chaplain, going to some end-of-life care and supporting the staff members that were not so sure of the space that they were working in. Suddenly, you know, a place that you look forward to be and to deliver your skill, it becomes like a death, you know, sentence, like a lamb going to the slaughter kind of situation in the first few months. And yeah, so dealing with it on a kind of daily basis in the hospital settings, but as a community in Leeds, there were some cases of people who lost their lives, and we could not attend. The biggest challenge was people were grieving in isolation, which became a bit of a challenge because we are used to coming together, supporting one another. But we saw people, you know, crying for a pastor. I remember one family that I could not go and support, and they had the ashes, and they wanted just someone to come and pray with them, and we couldn't. It was a lockdown that time. There were a lot of restrictions, and up to now, I don't know how they could have pulled through. So it has been quite challenging.
It is so heartbreaking because, yeah, people have lost loved ones, and we've not been able to, like you say, support one another the way that we normally do. And there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of wounds that have opened up as a result of this. Not only are we dealing with the pandemic itself, but it's got emotional factors. The fear factor is a big, aspect of this. Pastor Hartness, can you talk a little bit about, that, your observation on the emotional, impact, particularly as regards, things like fear and so on?
Thank you. I think what we need to do, if we, first of all, I think everybody will agree that there was quite a significant reaction of fear at every level, really. And if you just take a moment to try and understand the psychology behind fear, you can actually see that what we saw was a natural reaction, because it has to do with people's perception of risk. And for novel threats like COVID-19 is something new. The anxiety levels will tend to go very, very high. And the fact that a lot of people were actually dying, and also how it's communicated, it is airborne, and there was no cure, no vaccine, even up to this point. Also with modern technology, which is positive in some ways, but people were now accessing lots of information, some of it which wasn't true at every level. And because this was a new situation that we've never seen as a people, to that we have not seen COVID-19 before. At that point, what you'd expect is to have consistent messages and answers that address people's fears. But that wasn't the case, because this was something new. The World Health Organization wasn't very clear at the beginning, because everybody was learning. Here in the UK, Public Health England didn't have all the answers. The NHS had no answers. I know this also working in NHS management, that where we expected to provide answers for our staff, we ourselves didn't have the answers. So what you see then is that the people's fears are not being addressed adequately, and the perception of risk actually escalates. Also from a spiritual perspective, some people genuinely or not genuinely, I don't know, but we're capitalizing some so-called preachers, letting people, speaking and saying to people, this is the end of the world. So you had the confused people. I'm talking at every level, really, because the answers were not there. So that was a genuine reaction, which is expected, which is what you'd expect when there is a threat like that, because people don't quite understand. There were no answers. So my experience was really at every level, within the healthcare system itself, also within the church. When I say church, I mean the church global, because I'm quite connected to a lot of people from around the world. And as a minister, people expect you also to have answers. They come to you and say, is this the end of the world? And, because we have faith, that's one of the things. I mean, ZiMMA is a Christian body. So I can openly speak about some of the ways I was personally, and other ministers were addressing the situation. For a situation like this, you have to address it practically, which is try and direct people to the right sources where they get information, and be honest with people and let them know that there is no answers. But if we follow World Health Organization, Public Health England, though they don't have the answers, but they will get the answers at some point, because this is actually an unfolding situation. But we also use the word of God. So what I did, as some ministers I know did, we're sending communications to our congregations. Personally, I would record small videos, actually to address, even from a biblical perspective, where people thought it was the end of the world. As an example, Matthew 24:36 tells us that nobody knows when the end is coming. So we were addressing those questions, but also just giving people hope that even if it was the end of the world, which I didn't believe it was anyway, being a Christian, there is life after death anyway. So we use various avenues to address, but just in response to your very important question, there was genuine fear. I know things have gotten better now because of the where we are with the statistics, but Dr. Chireka has already made reference to the fact that we might see a second wave. It might not be the same as it was before, but I suppose that because there's a little bit more answers now, people know what they need to do, what precautions they need to take as individuals. So I suppose that the fear factor is going to be less than what it was. And if it was the same, we just use the same approaches that we used. And I encourage and let everybody know that we all have a responsibility to support one another and direct people to the appropriate sources for those answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Samushonga. Maybe I could just, follow up with Mrs. Samushonga and find out what your experience is as far as the impact of this in the family structures. How has this impacted, families, and what do you see as the major impact on the family structures?
All right. Thank you so much for having me. And on the effects of COVID-19 and the family structure, we have seen a lot of, with crisis, like what Pastor Harkness has just alluded to, it questions our traditions, it questions how we do things. So a whole lot of uncertainty came about. It's the fear of the unknown. And so how we do things had to change, and radically so. And so we saw some people being furloughed and some people being made redundant. So financially, it brought a lot of instability. Also health-wise, there was illness here, there, and everywhere, and people didn't know how to react to this. And so what impounds that fear is when we don't know how to, to control something, how to be in charge of something. So it brings a lot of frustration and a lot of upset. So within the family unit, the kids had to be home and they had to function from home. And so they had to do virtual classes and things like that. While that kept them safe, kids are very interactive and they like that contact with their friends. And so that was definitely, this is why I said it questioned a whole lot of our traditions, how we interact. And so kids were separated, and then we had to deal with the whole surge of mental illness. And then also on the other end, families had been used to different rhythms of working, and then we found ourselves just stuck at home. And for other people, it worked very well and it brought the family unit closer. And for some, they had children in university or all over the place, and people decided to go home. So it brought the family unit closer. But for some, like for those that were healthcare workers, they could not be home because they thought, if I was to go on the front line, come back home, I'm bringing illness or disease to my children. And so you had parents that could not be in contact with their children. And that is very vital to the family unit, because whether it is an elder parent that is used to having support from their family and they had to shield, so they were secluded in isolation, or it was parents with younger children that required maybe their parents or friends to support with childcare, and that could not be so. So you found that our rhythms of life, our traditions, and how we did life was challenged, and there was a whole lot of frustration. And again, on this, we saw a surge of domestic violence, and this perhaps was compounded by financial instability or the uncertainty, or where we think, I've lost control. And so we saw that globally there was an increase in domestic violence. So that emotional trauma, that uncertainty and everything that has gone about. And so like everything else that's been affected by this pandemic, the family unit was not immune to such stuff. However, it challenges the way we do things. So it requires us to adapt. So right now, the family unit has adapted to living. But maybe some people do a Zoom meeting as a family. If they have to be away from each other, they can get virtually and, you know, and create a new way of communication, a new way of staying in touch. But it's always about that innovation, re-strategizing, rethinking, so that the family unit stays together. But all of what we knew was questioned and broken by this COVID-19. And so by now, people have adjusted, people are readjusting, and they are realigning themselves, maybe now back to work rhythms or school rhythms, but the structure itself was questioned. So in a violent way, it was just sudden. What do we do? That's why you would find people in the shops fighting for tissues. And you think, what has tissues got to do with COVID-19? But rational thinking went out the window. But it took us to adopt, it took us to think, wait, what is happening? How can we partner with the healthcare people, stay home, be safe? And all those messages coming through helped us to cope with the crisis. And what I would say is for the family unit going ahead, let us think of new solutions, how to do our family, how to keep together, how to keep the rhythms going. And, you know, the negative things that we need to take away, you know, to remove completely is that when we are challenged by certain things, to vent it out in anger. But perhaps we need to stop, because the people that suffered domestic violence, where could they have gone during the lockdown? You know, so there was very limited places for them to go. But how can we solve this? Let's talk about things. Is there any support that we could get, and things like that? And going forward, and I always don't like to talk about the negatives without giving a solution. So it's the management of things. How effectively we use what we have, the resources, how efficiently, how timely, and the correct way of doing things. It could be parenting, it could be management of the finances that we have, or governance of everything else that is around us. So while we do not expect that change, going ahead, we need to expect change. And again, talk about certain things. People found themselves dead and nobody knew, did they have an insurance policy? How are they going to be buried? Thank God that during this time of COVID-19, there was no repatriations. So people were being buried here. So while people were mourning in isolation, nobody knew what to do. So perhaps as a community or as a people, this could be a conversation that could be easily had. If anything was to happen, who do you contact? How do you get hold of my insurance? Is it with the church? Is it with the solicitors? But there has to be somebody entrusted by that responsibilities. So let's take a fallback position, have insurance in place that can carry out some of those problems, measures in place. We talk to our children, we talk to our peers, we talk to our parents, we talk as a community, because mental illness was again another surge that we saw. Why? Because people are living in fear, with uncertainty, insecurity, and they don't have anybody to talk to. Perhaps that's another place the church can help. But in this time of isolation, as families, if people were able to talk and cope, and there was, and not have this stigma about, oh, let's not talk about death, but have that freedom to talk about that, perhaps that would have been an easier way to manage it. But also going forward, when we expect change, we talk about the difficult conversations. So be able to transform with that crisis and retool, reskill, and rebuild together. Thank you.
Mrs. Samshonga, you have just, unloaded a whole lot of stuff there. You've opened, a can of worms in a number of areas, things that we really need to talk about. You're talking about preparing for death.
Yeah.
You're talking about possibly wills and, final instructions. You're talking about funeral policies. You're talking about family structures and family routines. Just a whole lot of stuff there that I think somewhere along the line as ZiMMA, we need to help one another as a Black community to tackle, because there's just so much there, in the family situation that comes from this. It's not just COVID-19, but it's an excuse for us to really deal with issues that we've buried underneath. When life is okay, we can get away with those issues. If you die without a policy, or if there's no money, the church can get together, people can get together. But what do you do when that, those support structures aren't there? So a whole lot of stuff there that I hope as ZiMMA, we will get to down the road. Let me just, we could dig out a whole lot. And you also have spoken about the uncertainty of going into the future. We don't know what the future family is going to look like. There's going to be there's been so much disruption and so much that we're going to have to contend with. Well, very, very interesting. Pastor Midzi, talk to us a little bit about the lockdown and, just people being locked in and unable to move, and some of the impacts of this. What was your experience on this?
Very unnatural, because it's not within human nature to be confined. We are creatures of fellowship. And the lockdown caused such tremendous stress by locking people in. They can't move, they can't do anything. Even those that go to the mosque, go to church, go to public places, they can't do it. Children indoors, young people, you can imagine the energy that young people have, and they are locked inside. So it affected many things, just like Pastor Fungi has just alluded to. The lockdown that was brought by the pandemic affected everything that we ever knew and every other system that we used to. It caused anxiety levels, fear, and anger. Like she said earlier on, you then found out that people were venting on each other. They have not spent 2 weeks together before. They have not spent 1 day together before. And now they are not going anywhere. They are spending time together. For me as a pastor and as a counselor, the lockdown caused many uncertainties, even between married people, that even our office of counseling became inundated with calls, having meeting upon meeting, conference upon conference, trying to mediate and speak some sense to couples. That's the time that people discovered that they were together, but were not together after all. People discovered that they were so distant emotionally and physically by the lockdown. It revealed many things, because people were going on with their businesses, going to work, looking after the children, giving money. But when they were forced to be in one space, that's when husband and wife actually discovered that we don't have anything going between the two of us. And it caused many challenges. It affected churches. The lockdown affected churches. I speak to ministers, I speak to my fellow pastors, apostles, and those that are in the fivefold ministry, how they have been impacted by this thing. Now the congregants can't meet. You cannot do shepherding as you normally would do. It's shepherding from a distance. We can minister online, we can do things online, but the art and the skill of shepherding is you need to be very close to the flock. And that has really impacted the way we do ministry. So the lockdown has affected many things. I got to a place where I'm having to speak to young people, speak to kids, and when parents were able to bring in kids even to the office, Pastor, can you sit down with my children? They are so anxious. Can you spend some time? I would sit down with them and just speak life, speak hope to them. those that are in high school, because of these exams that had to be done by the teachers at judging whether they have passed or not. It has affected everything about young people, their future. Like Benjamin said earlier on, those that were finishing university, those that were doing their GSEs, that is the pressure that the lockdown has brought upon the people. So it's been so traumatic, anxiousness around everything, income levels dwindling for those that have to find new jobs. Things have just happened all over, that this pandemic that brought the lockdown has caused so much change and shift in the way we have to do things. That's what I can say about the lockdown, but things have changed so much. Businesses have been affected, churches have been affected, charities, any other organization is really under the pressure of the lockdown.
Wow, wow. One begins to wonder whether life will ever be the same. You know, many of us somehow long to get back to the good old days, but will the good old days ever come back? You know, this is a total disruption, and, you know, our lives are never going to be the same. Pastor Tembo, talk to us about, I know we've alluded to this, various of the panelists have alluded to this, but from your experiences with pastors, what's been the spiritual, you know, impact of this on pastors and churches? What have you observed in your rounds, you know, relating to different ones?
I think the issues that have been already commented are familiar also with pastors. What I've seen is that pastors were not immune to the COVID experience. It was actually bringing to question everything that we could have envisioned for the year. Some had brought out themes that we would have thought that the year was going to be having, you know, different successes, but everything just, you know, was brought to a halt and to a pause. That pause was not an easy experience, especially for our pastors that, you know, like from the migrant community. There could have been a lot of impact around our own pastors. But thank God that is when ZiMMA also was born, in that lockdown experience, where we started to find each other, and because everything had stopped. So, you know, being our brother's keeper, started to kind of have that nudge to just find out how people were. Some were not too well. Some were, you know, like physically were not well. Some emotionally, some, you know, mentally, some financially. I know of one pastor who had just opened his building around that time, barely 2 weeks, you know, into a contract, and bought chairs and things just came crumbling, and you'd have signed a contract, you can't come out of that, and many have this landlord-tenant relationship. In other words, we don't have our own spaces. That means, you know, like finding, you know, that new relationship where you need to negotiate the terms. If you had buildings that you had signed for in terms of, you know, occupying them throughout the month or the year, you know, to renegotiate, I found that it was a challenge for many pastors. And yeah, but all that, you know, it could have been the negative, but one of the things, maybe for me, one of the things, it exposed me to my wife every day, because I didn't have any excuse of going to a follow-up or something that I think it was actually mentioned by someone that you find people living together, but being spared from clashing because you are too busy, then you can avoid each other, but then you are stuck within that. So for me, I embarked in a 12-week course on marriage to just pause and look at each other and deepen the relationship. And I thank God that it was one of the best experience I had with my wife to understand. I thought I knew her, but I had overlooked so many things around her because of ministry. So ministry became an excuse of not having that synergy with my wife, and sometimes things like that spiritual intimacy. So I really benefited from that pause and enforce the Sabbath. So there was that pruning, obvious, with this maybe lockdown, where we started to see pastors reaching out to one another, where sometimes we used to just ignore each other, but there was that deliberate and intentional way of connecting with other men of God to find support. So within this pruning, it has developed personal relationships. Amongst them is what we have seen ZiMMA doing. Maybe we have worked together within the steering committee. I've actually have more meaningful relationships with some of you guys within this time, which could not have happened. I would think that it would not have been possible. So with the experiences that COVID has brought, it has brought obvious vulnerability among even the servants of God, where people have been vulnerable to each other to really say, I'm struggling. I remember talking to one pastor and feeling that kind of sense of being defeated, and but also bring about that conversation to the bigger picture of what was happening. It started to produce that interdependence. So you know what? You're not an individual. You're not isolated in this, and we are not invincible. The worst thing that we can try to appear is to be thinking that maybe look strong, tough, and not invincible, but making ourselves vulnerable and is help then us ourselves to have that reliance in terms of one another, and put to question what we meant church was. And because we would put church into the context of programs, meetings, conferences, but everything has been put to a halt. But I think the most common slogan that I saw was that the church building may be shut, but we, the church, remain open and active. I think that was a kind of defiance of pastors saying that, we need to train our people not to be functional within just the church building and meetings and conferences, and but to really consider the whole theology about church and that ecclesia, and take responsibility with all the issues that affect people's lives. Even that includes environment and the policies. Some of them, they become sometimes, with government bring out, yes, the scientific evidence, but also if spiritual evidence can be brought out in this where we are, that can help to balance the whole narrative. So for that experience that I really have seen the building of the community. Obvious, we are lacking the physical gathering. That is all about what the church is. Having impact on people's lives as leaders. Even Jesus, he did not zoom in and zoom out, but he took flesh and came amongst us and became relevant. So having that ability to share, to meet, and it's one of the essence of our humanity. So that has been deprived, unfortunately. So it has put pastors in a very awkward position of failing to do the primary thing that they are passionate about. And so we have been struggling. So in the short, that is what I can maybe comment on in terms of our experience as pastors.
Thank you so much for that detailed, exposition in terms of your observations. We do want to say to pastors that you're not in this alone. We are in this together. And that's why ZiMMA has been formed, so that we can support one another. This has been a very difficult time, I think, for many churches, being unable to meet. Incomes have been affected. There's been all kinds of stress levels on pastors. We are not immune ourselves. I mean, some have fallen sick, having caught the virus. And, just the pressures of what we've had to go through, we are not immune to those things. So we just want to encourage everyone to realize that there is help for you. This is what we want to do as ZiMMA. We want to, stand with one another, to pray with one another, and to support and encourage one another. Benjamin, let me come to you. This has been the advent of Zoom. I mean, Zoom has just exploded. Everybody's zooming in and out, and technology, and the lockdown affected giving. Some churches did not even have online giving.
Yeah.
So the whole area of technology, what's your experience? How have you felt? Was the church ready technologically? Were we prepared for this? Are we prepared? Are we up to the speed, or are we still lagging behind?
I think it's a bit of both. Both yes and no. The church, I think the church for a long time has been more reactive than proactive. And also I think the answer depends and varies on church cultures. So you find that a lot of churches who are innovation driven would have been on the forefront. Like, for example, live streaming. Some churches have got full setup of live streaming equipment. Other people are just familiar with using a phone. And I don't think it comes down to the ability or the competency of members of the church. It comes down to just one thing: intentionality. Is a church actually intentional about being innovative? And I think to move forward, I think a church has to be very intentional about being innovative. And one of the key things is to actually engage young people, because young people are at the forefront of technology. Young people are at the forefront of innovation. So I think the church has to engage young people. And one of the things I noticed, maybe speaking from my church background, and maybe others can relate, is that young people have often only been involved as much as being given a youth department. But I think where we're going, I would assume the church of the future and the start of the future really causes for the church to be more intentional and not just look at young people as people within an age group, demographic, or a youth group, but actually consider, and I know I'm speaking to leaders here, consider actually involving young people in the actual leadership of your church. Consider having young people in the actual strategy development of the church. Because if we don't, we'll pretty much end up like the traditional churches. I know, because I've got friends who are youth leaders in the Methodist and Anglican, and there has been a decline. For example, you find that a lot of them, there's been an aging population and you find that a lot of these traditional churches, they are now a little, it's a big building with a little club, almost like a bingo club of people above 70, because they failed to engage young people 20 years ago. And if you don't engage young people, the world has got a place for them. The world has got jobs for them. The world will give them a sense of belonging. The world will give them a platform to, explore their leadership skills. So I think the church was prepared and not prepared at the same time. It was prepared, but not to the level at which technology is going. So we are familiar with how Facebook Live goes, but is a church able to, stream on multiple platforms? That's now a next level of innovation. So I think engaging young people, and also lastly, promoting the STEM culture. I think in our Zimbabwean community in particular, we've had an influence of parents pushing kids towards nursing. And I know there is a rationale for that in terms of job security and etc. But I think we have to look broader and push our young people towards the STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because that's where the world is going. And I think a church is only as powerful and as strong as its youth base, as its young people. One time I was talking to the Hillsong lead pastor, Pastor Gary Clark, and their youth pastor, and I was saying, how do you guys manage to keep young people engaged? How do you guys manage to keep a vibrant youth ministry as Hillsong? And they said, number one, you need to give young people, accept them as they are. And once they walk in through the doors of your church, to maintain them, you need to give young people something to do. And I believe technology is one of those things that we really need to engage young people in. And lastly, I think the church needs to really look inwardly and have almost like a pastel or SWOT analysis. Some of you, I heard many are management consultants, you might be familiar with those terms. Like, where are we politically in terms of our political influence? Where are we in terms of our environmental awareness? Where are we in terms of advancement? Where are we in terms of our socioeconomic advancements? And that will tell you how far you're going. But lastly, a church is as vibrant as its young people.
Wow. Benjamin, you really are hitting some of us in between the eyes. Wow. There's so much work that you're putting on us. This technology stuff. Some of us are foreigners to. We are aliens to technology. I mean, just touching the computer is. Now you're talking about all the multiple platforms that we must be on and so on. What a challenge. And talking about Zimbabwean churches, for instance, I mean, many of our churches are just, ghettos where we want to get together and sing a few Shona songs or Ndebele songs, or just, make us feel like home. And yet you're trying to broaden our thinking. There's a lot of challenges there. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges there. I just feel you're hitting us between the eyes. Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else on the panel who wants to throw in something there? I want to get back to Dr. Chireka. While I'm doing that, maybe if there are comments that you want to throw in, please just get ready. Dr. Chireka, you guys are developing, you've been working very hard to come up with vaccines and so on. And some of us have been reading a lot of stuff about vaccines and 666 and, that kind of stuff, and fears of the West using vaccines to control us as Black people and all of that stuff. Can you comment a little bit about that? First, how far are we on getting toward a vaccine? Number two, when you do come up with vaccines, should we be afraid? Should we fear that you guys are onto something? Some of the conspiracy theories about, vaccines on the right arm and the forehead and all that kind of stuff. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I just want to say something that the way we look at a problem determines the way we try to solve it. They are really concerned, yes, what has happened in the past, where there have been some racist tendencies in the research that has been happening. For example, when the Black people in America, they were not given penicillin, most people wanted to find the effects of syphilis, which is a sad scenario, sad episode in the medical history. But let's now look at, we have been actually in Zimbabwe, we have been measles-free, polio-free, all these things we've managed to achieve those status because we are immunizing our children. We have been immunized, even TB, we are also fighting it. So immunization, vaccines is something that is good, but of course, we need to make sure that everyone is involved, people are engaged, all those worries, concerns are raised. Unfortunately, we do have some researchers who have got really racist tendencies. For example, those two French researchers who were saying we should start with the research in Africa because they definitely need it, or they're trying to take Africans as second citizens or second-class citizens, which is very unfortunate. Okay, coming back to the vaccine. What people must understand is that vaccine, it is also business. Several companies, several pharmaceutical companies are rushing, and it's also political power. That's why you find China is trying to outdo America. America is trying to outdo Russia. Russia is out. UK is also trying to do something. So everyone is competing. But what we know is that for a vaccine to be on the market, from research to the market, it can take almost at least 18 months or 2 years. But what they are doing now, there is actually an inquiry, a consultation going on at the moment, which is going to close on the 18th of September, where they're asking people, should we allow bypass some of these research protocols, guidelines, where a vaccine has to undergo through, because we cannot afford to wait for all those procedures when we know that the vaccine does work. So it's a consultation going on. So yes, we do agree that we mustn't wait longer than necessary to have a vaccine. When a vaccine is being in the initial stages where they're researching it, it is also good to have people from our community. Because right now with the fear, there's few people who are going volunteering to for the research studies to be subjects. There's an Oxford research which is being done, and most of the people are white there. They are not people from our community. Why? Because we fear. That is the problem that we end up running into. Instead of participating and ask those questions that we are worried about. Personally, I've registered. I'm waiting to be invited, because the reason why I'm doing that is, how do we know how these things would react in Black people if we are not allowing the research, controlled research, to take place? If we are afraid, then we need also to have Black people leading this research work. Even in Africa, we need to have research. So this is where I find that the way we look at a problem, if you just look at a problem that, oh, they want to kill us, and then you do nothing, you need to start doing something, your own research, to find how you can come up with the vaccines. That's what we need to do. But the problem that we find is that if you look at Madagascar, they came up with their medicine and they said, oh, it has to be put on the market without even testing, without even researching it. And then on the other hand, you are saying, don't bring vaccine. We need you to research that properly. So you are contradicting yourself. Whatever we do, whether it's a herb from Mondoro, we have to research, you make sure that it is safe. Even a vaccine from United Kingdom, we have to make sure that it is safe. And we'll make sure that it is being used not on racial grounds, not being tested on without proper ethics, morals being followed. There are guidelines which apply to everyone. So those guidelines should be applied to everyone. But yes, when are we likely to get the vaccine? There's a lot of rest to get a vaccine. Some people are saying we may get a vaccine in January, or some will even say November. Those are wishful thinking. And we want a vaccine as soon as possible. But what we know is that it does take time. And even if they quickly produce a vaccine, we will interrogate it, we will question it. That is going to cause problems, and it's likely to be delayed, because we don't want things that are half-baked. We don't want things that will jeopardize our community. We don't want things that will jeopardize our patients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chireka. I need to apologize to our audience, I should have pointed out right at the beginning that there's opportunity to ask questions, ask the panelists questions. If you had used the chat factor, the chat function to post your questions. We have Dr. Sande in the background, who was waiting for fielding those questions. If you have any question, please do ask that question. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a round now and just go through, all the panelists and have them say maybe a closing statement as we transition towards, our Q&A, time. Thank you so much to all the panelists for all your contributions. I'm going to give you about a minute each to maybe say something in summary as we round up this segment of our discussions. Well, first of all, Pastor Anthony, any closing, statement?
Yeah, I just want to challenge us as the church and the leaders within this time that we are in, about our pastoral obvious responsibility, that whatever the cost, whether it will be by phone, email, whether it will be by WhatsApp, but whichever way, let's continue with our pastoral care. A lot of people are out there who are lonely, and as we have heard from the young man Hamadishe, that younger people need to be involved, mobilized to help us with meeting these basic needs of proclamation and continue with our prophetic mandate. But yeah, there is a lot of challenge of us, meeting these needs, and we need to be creative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Anthony. Pastor Midzi, 1 minute of closing.
Yeah, in the wake of everything that has gone on and still going on, my word of encouragement is don't be alone. Don't ever feel alone. Let's connect. Let's be in touch with one another so that we can encourage one another where the Lord has placed us. So this pandemic has brought us together so that we can learn, we can get some energy from each other. So that's all I can say. Let's get in touch. Let's encourage one another.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Samushonga, any closing remarks?
Oh, yes. Yeah, but just before I give my closing remarks, I just want to get back to knife crime. There was one particular thing that I picked up on this because it's the victims of knife crime. So there was a lot of rape that happened. And people were using knives as the weapon. And the victim support has issued a statement, and this I quote from the chief executive of victim support, Diana Fawcett, and she reports that because of the emotional trauma and the consequences of these threats and attacks, some of them were just threats, but some of them were attacks. The victims have got an ongoing trauma. And they've seen that the victims do not want to take further action. And perhaps this is a conversation that we need to embrace as a people, as a community, even as churches, to support, because the victims, instead of wanting perpetrators charged, they're not supporting action being taken, to the extent that more than 40.6% of rape victims did not support action being taken. And the number is increasing from 2014 to 2015, it was 8.7%, and 2019, 2020 is 22.9%. And that says a lot. It's not just about the perpetrators being charged, but the victims of knife crime as well, to be supported. So we need to normalize and talk about this and support the people that have perhaps gone through such trauma. And to my concluding remarks, no one is immune to crisis, and therefore we need to create room for innovation, be able to adapt, be able to adjust. And like I alluded earlier on, that we need to manage change. And so survival in crisis depends on our foundation knowledge. So let's empower ourselves, let's be out there, let's learn, let's equip ourselves with knowledge, but as well as the resources. Dr. Chirek alluded to the fact that not many of the Black minority people are engaging in the research. Perhaps it could be of fear, but if we empower ourselves through education, even through prayer, and get ahead and take a seat at the table, then we will not be violated by other people that are bringing their research. So if we participate, or if we tool ourselves and get in the marketplace, get engaged in education or in the right, like what Benjamin said, in STEM, the science and things like that, then we are then well equipped to deal with crisis when it comes. And we are ready to answer or ask the question. Sometimes we don't know what to ask because we don't know. But if we've got that foundation knowledge, then we can engage in an intellectual discussion with whoever is offering us solution or advice. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Samshonga. Dr. Chireka, you have to run. I recognize that. But before you run, 1 minute closing remark, please.
Yeah, my closing remarks is that we have to understand that stress, when it is so chronic, it causes what we call chronic inflammation, and it also results in us having diseases such as obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart attack. So we need to understand that even the COVID pandemic is causing stress, and then indirectly it will lead to these other challenges. And I also want to let people that we need to be innovative in the way we deal with our doctors, because we know most of services have been disrupted, most of the services have been closed. Doctors are asking us to consult with them remotely, using our smartphones, using our computers. We need to embrace that, not to say I don't have a phone, not to say I'm not used to this. We need to embrace that new normal and engage with it. Make sure that you've taken a photo of your rash and a picture of your rash and send it to your doctor. Make sure that you've got a nice phone to engage with your doctor, or a nice iPad, or anything that will enable you to consult with your doctor remotely. Let us innovate. Let us just not continue to go back to the old ways. Moving forward, we're going to be consulting patients in a different way remotely. So that is the new normal. Let's get used to it. Let's embrace it, and let's get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chireka. Much appreciated. We appreciate your time this afternoon, and we understand that you have to go. We release you, but we are so grateful. Thank you for giving us, of your expertise and experiences in this very important topic. All right. Okay. Again, he's raising some very important issues there. Pastor Fungi also raised some more, critical issues to do with, knife crime, rape, and so on. Guys in ZiMMA, our work is cut out for us. There's so many topics that we have to deal with. All we're doing this afternoon is just scratching, the surface on some of these topics. We'll have to come back to them in detail and spend time focusing on each one. Okay, Benjamin, your last shot.
Thank you, sir. In closing, I think number one, young people need three things. They want a sense of belonging, They want to be involved in the leadership and the activities of the church, and they actually want to make a difference. And also just to remind people are the future. So engage young people in leadership, engage young people in the strategy development. As the word of God says that, the sons of Issachar understood the times. And also Jesus said that the sons of this world are much wiser in their generation than the sons of light. I think the church has to rise to the level where you understand the times, where is technology going, where are young people going, and engage them, because young people do actually understand the times. And also to model out a leadership style of diversity, and as is in the corporate world, where there's actually a quota where you need of women, certain representation of young people, certainly ethnicities like Black people on your board. Let the church take that same approach. I want all of you as pastors and apostles and bishops here to go and have an introspection and ask yourself and answer honestly, what place do young people have in this ministry? What place do young people have in this church? Do they actually have a voice? And are we listening to them? And lastly, just to re-emphasize, promoting STEM culture, both in terms of careers and academics, as Dr. Chirika rightfully said. He alluded to something along the lines of involving Black people in research. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's in cancer research doing a PhD, and we're reflecting back on the death of Chadwick Boseman. And I wanted to understand how cancer works. And he said, Black people are actually the bottom of this in terms of cancer treatment, because cancer research is being done predominantly by Caucasian researchers, so we can't do cancer research for Black people. So let's take the same approach in terms of COVID. Let's have young people, young Black people in research. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. This has been very, very enriching. I had in the background Dr. Nomata Sande. He was supposed to be taking questions. Dr. Sande is part of the steering committee of ZiMMA, and he's done a lot of work with us, on the committee. He's been very quietly, sitting in the background. Dr. Sande, did any questions come through? If not, do you yourself have something to say? We didn't give you a chance, but would you like to say something?
Thank you so much. I don't have a question that I've seen. Maybe probably most of the people they're watching on the live streaming. But I just wanted also to add on to the discussion that the theology that we as leaders is changing rapidly, and the new normal as leaders. For example, I've observed that the tenets of faith and some sacraments have been tampered with due to this pandemic, and it is important for us as leaders to craft a new theology. And I think the online worship should be the new normal, as opposed to the contact as I'm predicting the future. So as leaders, let us begin to, how can we teach our congregants to accept that prayer can be offered through a telephone, and it's as good as laying in of hands. And I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of theology. How, as leaders, are we now wanting to push back to the traditional ways, or do we need to adopt and encourage the church to receive by faith? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much. I want to go back to Pastor Samshonga. I wanted to leave you till last because I'd like you, as you give your closing remarks, to also talk to us a little bit about ZiMMA and the launch that's coming up in November. So, Pastor Samshonga, over to you.
Thank you very much. My concluding remarks are, I know others have touched on a lot of other things, the spiritual, the health, but I just want to say to everybody that's listening to us, let us brace ourselves for the effects of the economy. When I speak of economy, it's not an entity that is separate from ourselves. Behind the economy, they're actually individuals. We will talk of the impact of the businesses, I mean, I'm involved in all three sectors of the economy, the public sector, the private sector, and the third sector, which is the charity. And all of those areas have been affected. And we haven't quite seen the impact of the economy yet. Yes, we are seeing an improvement within, in terms of the virus itself and its impact health-wise. We are a little bit more prepared for it. We have a little bit more information about how to protect ourselves. Even though the numbers are going up, it's not corresponding. We don't have a lot of people sick in the hospitals as a consequence, but we need to brace ourselves for the economy. I mean, some of you will know that in the second quarter, that the GDP of the UK went down by 20%, and we will see the results. I was just speaking to somebody yesterday, and it was quite emotional. I spoke to my wife, somebody I met, just going about doing my business. What they said was that he's a father who's nearing retirement, and both his children who were living by themselves have come back home. His wife is shielding, and he's not certain about tomorrow. So let's brace ourselves because the impact of the economy, there's a person at the end of it, there's a family behind it, but there are some things that let's keep our ears and our eyes open such that we can access all sources of help. So let's seek out those help initiatives that coming out. Let's keep our eyes, let's share. I've had Pastor Midzi saying that don't be on your own, share with other people, because somebody might just know a tip that might help you along those lines. So my closing statement is that let us not be alone. The economy has been hit. We'll see the consequences later on that will impact on our everyday lives. But I suppose there's going to be help out there. Let us go for it. Let's put ourselves out. Let's share information if there's anything that you know that might help somebody. I've been asked to make a closing statement on behalf of ZiMMA and speak about who we are in just a short time, but also about the launch that's coming. So what is ZiMMA? Somebody might be asking out there. ZiMMA, we have a very ambitious, we are very ambitious about building an association of ministers who have Zimbabwean heritage, but they are actually ministering in the UK. I want to underline at that, because I do have conversation with people. We are not forming an association to Zimbabweanize ourselves. We are already Zimbabwe. We have our heritage. We are very proud of our heritage. Although we know that a lot of us are now British citizens, we do not want to disassociate with our heritage, because we believe that the heritage that we have been given by God. So if you are a woman, that's the gift that God has given you. If your heritage is Zimbabwean, like me, I'm proud of it. A lot of us ministers who are going to be part of ZiMMA, we operate in a multicultural society. Even our churches reflect that, but we have a connection as people who have a heritage from Zimbabwe. So our vision statement is to unite, inspire, and equip ministers for effective ministry and kingdom. So when I speak of unite, we are coming together. We have a shared view of our heritage, but there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing that's going to help us in our individual ministries. So it is open for anybody who is a minister. There's so many ways that people can minister. You might be a pastor, you might be an evangelist, you might be a worship minister. There's so many ways. And our mission is, as an association, we exist to support the well-being of ministers and to promote networking and cultivate and safeguarding high standards of ministerial effectiveness and professionalism. We are very proud of our profession as ministers. So to achieve this, we have 6 domains that we're going to be operating in. The first one is fellowship or network, and then there's going to be an element of health and well-being. Some of us do have health background, but we want to bring that more into our association, because I mean, like any other association, we are quite passionate about the health and well-being of our prospective members. There's also a learning and development domain where there's going to be lots of development opportunities. We're going to link with educational providers and create a platform where our members, or those who become members, will be impacted by that. We have a domain of governance and compliance that will look at the governance and the compliance of the association, but we're also going to be having one of our activities is ministerial accreditation. Now, we do understand that there are some ministers who belong to denominations, some belong to fellowship, but there are some people who are independent in ministry. And we will have that as one of our core activities for ministerial accreditation. And then last but not least, we have an ambition to promote entrepreneurship amongst the ministers. So that's just the basics of who we are and what we are building. Let me just finish off by saying we are in the process of building this association. A lot of work is taking place. I'm very excited about it. A lot of work is actually happening in the background. Some of the people you saw on this panel, they are working day and night, and there's an army of other people who are not here on the platform, who have volunteered themselves in the working groups for each of those domains. We are quite aware that we haven't reached every potential or prospective member. So if you are a minister there with a heritage from Zimbabwe, let me reassure you, there's nothing to worry about associating with the Zimbabwean ministers. We are very professional in our own right, and we want to build an association that's very professional. And I'm going to finish by just inviting all of you. We're going to have our launch event. It will be on Saturday, the 11th of November. It's going to be a virtual program, obviously, because of what's happening. We are not yet clear. We're not yet out of the woods in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we have a very ambitious, as I've said, program. We will have a guest speaker, Billy Kennedy, who is with the Pioneer Network. Some of you will know the Pioneer Network. This is where we're going to present a lot of the work that we have been doing behind the scenes of where we are as an association and how each one of us can get involved. So look out for adverts, look out for appeals, because in the next few weeks, we're going to be out there with full force and letting you know about this event. So thank you very much, Bishop Ngeza.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists and to all those out there who have been, part of this discussion this afternoon. I do apologize that we did not handle the Q&A aspect like we had envisaged we would, and therefore we've not been able to, take your questions and to address some of your questions. But if you're on the main group and you've got questions, you can post your questions there, and we would try and answer those questions. So thank you for participating in this afternoon's discussion. As you can see, for us in diaspora, there's just so much work that still needs to be done, and so many topics that we need to get into. We need to spend quality time on each of these topics as we think about Brexit, as we think about knife crime, as we think about the pandemic, as we think about Black Lives Matter. So many issues that we still need to talk about. So we'll be coming back to you. We'll be hosting a number of these webinars just to tease out some of these issues together so that we can find our way and share ideas and so on. We are truly grateful for your participation this afternoon, and the Lord bless you. So allow me to pray, and then we will just round off our time together. So let's pray. Father, we are so grateful for your being with us and helping us this afternoon. We pray, even as we've just touched on some of these topics briefly, that you will help us to go into them with depth. I pray particularly that no one of us will feel alone, that we will know that we've got people who care, people who understand, people who are sharing the same difficulties, the same challenges that we're experiencing. Father, whether it's talking about victims of rape, whether it's talking about young people's participation, whether it's talking about medical fears and conspiracy theories and all these things, may we be found as Black people, maybe of African origin, Lord, to to be up to speed, that we would not be left behind. Father, that we would be able to sit at the table with our contemporaries and face them in the eye and be able to have the same conversation and not be eating from under the table. Lord, I pray that you will make ZiMMA strong. Thank you for the men and women that are working behind the scenes to build this association. I pray, Father, that you will be honored and glorified through it. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you met some of the ZiMMA committee. Just to say that there's one other member who has not been on this platform today, Pastor Owen Wenyeve, who unfortunately was not able to be part of the group, but the majority of the working committee you met today, and we look forward to introducing them fully on the 11th of November. And so with those words, thank you very much for coming. We look forward to seeing you shortly. If we don't call you before then, we will meet you on the 11th of November, but it's just possible that we might just put on another seminar, webinar like this to tease out, a topic before we get to November 11th. God bless you. It's been great having you. See you next time.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.